This is a video for the series of Members' Best Games. They're invited to submit their best game of chess, or for that matter, I'm accepting any game, preferably not blitz time control. Standard times are the best because that's real chess, okay? This was submitted by Gottlieb, and it is his game he played last year in the U.S. Amateur Team Championship East. So it's certainly a long standard game. I don't know the exact time control. We would estimate maybe 40 moves in 2 hours or something along that line, which is perfect. That's a good chess game. And okay, so he's playing a high-rated player. I don't know the rating of either opponent. That's not important. The game is going to end in a draw, and if you can draw with black against a higher-rated opponent, then certainly that has to be considered a successful venture, especially in a team tournament where you're playing as one, and when you can draw with black and win with white, that helps your team. Okay, so let's have a look at the game and see what we can uncover. All right. So with this move, with e3, white is basically signaling his intention. There's a lot of players that use this system. It's basically the Stonewall system. You could call it a bird's opening, Dutch Stonewall Dutch reversed. That's what black is headed for. And the simple way to deal with this opening is what? Develop your pieces. It's just that simple. There are certain things about the position that allow black chances to not only equalize but eventually play for a win, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. Okay, so everything black is doing so far is fine. He's getting his pieces developed, and now here we have the Stonewall formation. Okay, so at this point, black should probably be thinking about getting castled, but it doesn't really matter exactly because white's going to go through a basic system here. One thing about this opening is white tends to play the same opening moves against virtually anything as long as it's safe. And there's an old expression: this person plays the same opening moves against everyone for 10 moves, then looks up and sees what the position looks like. So that's just kind of like an expression. That can be dangerous if your opponent challenges you in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so okay, move 7. Let's talk about this position a little bit before I show black's next move. Okay, the number one priority black needs to do right now is develop, and he doesn't do that. As a matter of fact, he commits a strategic mistake, and I'll explain that in just a moment. What do we have going here? Well, I've run into people that play this system, and let me give you a potential sample line. I call it fantasy chess. It's just kind of like the plan that white employs here. Okay, so let's just play a variation. Let's make some developing moves. Okay. Now I'm not saying white's going to do this, but a lot of white players do exactly that. And now the next step is to bring the queen to e1, and it's headed for h4. Okay. It could be a little dangerous going there, but let's just, like I say, let's just develop some pieces. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play d5 here. Doesn't mean it's the move. I'm just kind of showing you the setup that I've seen a lot of these Dutch players reverse play. Now, yeah, black could tempo the queen, but I'm just kind of trying to show you the basic setup here. Okay, then queen c7. Then white plays g4. Let's develop another piece just to show you how dangerous this can get. All of a sudden you have g5 coming down your throat, and you got to watch out because white's going to be checkmating black here real quick. Black, it appears, loses a pawn here, so black had to be a little careful. But I wanted to show, even though this wasn't the best continuation for black, I wanted to show this to everyone, to give you an idea of what white's trying to do here. And this is the ideal position for white. So clearly what black needs to do is improve on his position somewhere. how can he do that? Well, obviously the rook move was a mistake because of g5. We need to cover this weakness that's coming. So how can we handle that? Well, there's a lot of ways. One way is to bring the knight back, although the knight doesn't seem to have much scope there, and it gets in the way of the rook. So I'm just showing a sample idea. Now we answer g5 with knight e4, and we have shut that dangerous diagonal off, and white's going to have to redeploy things to try to conduct his attack. So that's one way to deal with the problem. Okay, now there's another, and this e4 square is a very useful square for black. Okay, because white has left that hole in the formation. He's set up this position so he can assault the black king with his pawns, but he's left that one glaring weakness. Now, and black has done well to occupy it. Now, obviously, white cannot take on e4 with his knight because he's going to get a couple pieces forked. And if he takes with the bishop, then he's just basically given up his best piece, his best minor piece, or his better bishop. Now let's look at the strategic drawback for black here, or for white here, and here it is. Okay, this is the problem piece. This bishop has no scope, and it's not going to get any scope for a long time. It's something that white is giving up. He's to get this pawn assault and the play with the knights and so forth. He has entombed that bishop, so it's not going anywhere right now. Now it can still find a square. It needs to at some point so that white can develop this rook. Okay, it's either going to have to find its way to d2 or b2, and both of those squares are occupied. So white's not completely developed, and black is. So this position roughly is about even. Okay, but black has some things here that you might be kind of surprised with. The first thing is occupation of e4, and the other thing that black has going here is that white cannot control the counterpart square e5. Okay, because just to give you an example, let's suppose it's white's move. Suppose he wants to play knight e5, and this is played with the objective of bringing the other knight in to reinforce it. Well, it can get a little tricky, but black can kick that knight right out of there. Okay, it's not going anywhere. Now, yeah, white can make an exchange, but guess what? That knight's got to move. Where are you going to put it? Well, you want to go back there to f3. I'm hovering it over f3. Let's try g4. Now, you've got some tricks here. Okay, there's this open g file, and that could work in black's favor just as well. Okay, nothing is certain here. Black probably does well to vacate his king off the premises. Now, it would probably be a mistake to push f5, simply because that in turn gives the square back to black, or back to white. You don't want to do that. Okay, so let's just kind of play this out a little bit and see what could potentially happen. Okay, and the black king is safe, and then white does the same thing too. Now, as I said, we've got this little problem down here. We don't have a good square for this knight. Where are we going to put it? If we put it on f7, it's possible that f6 could fall. Bishop takes, and then e takes, and then we drop this pawn. We can't really go back to c6 just yet because e4 will fall. But we'll find a way to do this. Let's see. Let's kind of play with this a little bit. Come up with an idea for black here. One way is to bring this bishop up to c6. That clears b7 for the knight, and here the knight wants to go into d6 and reinforce the knight on e4. Okay. Now white needs to make a move. Let's bring this rook over here. Okay. But white still doesn't have a lot of attackers in this position. You can get aggressive with queen h6, but black shouldn't worry about that too much. Let's try to get this bishop into play, okay, or so that we can get this rook into play. Okay, let's focus on that as a possible line where we want to put this knight. Let's put him on f1. That way maybe he can get up to g3 and h5. It takes a while. Black's got time to do some maneuvering of his own. So this is a good point now to bring this knight to d6. And now white gets his bishop out. But then look, suddenly black gets his knight into play. And the queen is under attack. And, you got to be careful. It could get trapped here easily enough if queen h5. Who knows? Maybe g3. Whoop! Didn't want to go there. Okay. G3 is well covered, but if the right things happen, maybe black can drop a knight in g3 and fork. It's well covered. H2, the rook on g1 and the knight on f1. We're all covering that square just fine. But at some point, black may black may be able to evict this queen right out of there with bishop e8. And matter of fact, let's just go ahead and do it. We could play rook g8. We could also play rook g8. Then bring this rook over to f8. Then bring the bishop back. But let's just do it now. Let's get rid of that queen. We gained a tempo. Okay, now let's get the rooks connected and find a square for the knight. Okay, and let's suppose white brings his knight up. Oh, you can't do that. That's going to hang your bishop. Let's see. And black does not want to take this bishop. It's just such a horrible piece. So let's bring this rook over first. It's a slow, meticulous maneuvering game, but it's black's turn. He does this. Now the bishop drops back so that it's safe. Okay, and now it's black's turn. What do you want to do? Double rooks? Yeah, why not? Let's double rooks. Okay, and let white go about his way. What he was trying to do. Knight g3. Now he's threatening to win a pawn again. How are we going to handle that? Well, one way is to bring this knight back to d6. And, you can see the development's about even. Black is hanging tough. He's threatening to win a piece now. Knight takes knight check, followed by bishop takes bishop. And white hasn't proved anything, that he's got anything. So black's always got resources in this thing if you're careful. But I wanted to take some time just to show you what white is trying to do in this, just in case any of you that watch this video ever run into somebody that plays this Stonewall system, and if your player of the system is white, maybe I've given you some food for thought. If you didn't know this maneuver that I've just shown you to try to checkmate black in a hurry, take a look at it, give it a try. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go back, and because I've got this long variation, it may not be easy to find exactly where we want to be. Okay, no, I found it. Okay, so we're back in this position. And as I was saying, when I went into this tangent, that one line to explain the strategies, I said black didn't play the best move. And here's his move. Okay, nope, that's not his move. Okay, when you play a sub-variation, it suddenly makes it the main line. It's one of the drawbacks with this. Okay, now what's wrong with this move? I said it was the wrong move. Let's talk about why it's wrong. Well, first off, I was saying black needs to develop, and I was suggesting bishop e7 and castling. This is not a developing move. It also, strategically, it helps white a great deal, because suddenly this bishop it now has chances to get in the game. Okay, so that's strategically black hasn't done too well by making this exchange. He's given white a chance to activate that piece. Okay, so now black delays developing his bishop again and plays d6. Well, there was no need to play that move. Really, there wasn't. it's better to just leave it there. You don't necessarily want to put it on d5 because then you're blocking in your own bishop. So it's better just let the pawn sit here. Let it sit and get developed. Development will always trump, almost always trump, a pawn move. The pawn can always go to d6 later. Maybe it'll go in effectively when white decides to drop a piece in there. Then maybe that's the time to do it. Gain a tempo and maybe get some favorable exchanges that activate this bishop. You know, it wouldn't be bad to see these two knights off the board for black, because suddenly this bishop is pointing right at where white is probably going to castle. So d6 is a minor error, and it'll become apparent in a little bit why that's a mistake. Okay, so now finally we get bishop e7 and then both sides castle. So white's done pretty well out of this. Now, but also from the same context, black is not bad. Black has basically no weakness in his position. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the black position, even though I've said he hasn't played it accurately. He basically what he's done is given white just a little bit of freedom, and the freedom meaning this one little bishop. Okay, it's not ready to develop yet, but it will be. So basically, white's got some free play here, and obviously white didn't go for this plan that I was suggesting. And again, there may be some drawbacks. You know, you can throw that knight in with a discovery, but still, it's the idea of that other line again. It was just to show you some of the things that white tries to achieve in this. Okay, so white has a free game. He's got to get this bishop developed so he can get this rook developed, meaning this knight's got to move. So let's centralize it. Perfectly good move. Now, again, the rule of thumb, and I'll say it again, the rule of thumb is don't make exchanges that improve the position of your opponent's pieces. Let him make exchanges that improve the position of your pieces. Okay? It's real simple. Black should not even consider taking this knight on e4, and that's what he does. So what's a better move? Well, in light of everything else, develop something. Here it is. Rook c8, perfectly good move. Queen c7, perfectly good move. Queen d7, perfectly good move. Any one of those three moves is fine. Let white make the exchange on f6, even though this bishop won't have much scope on f6. Let white make the exchange. Okay, real simple. Now let's just take a look at this and see what happens. Okay, I was suggesting queen c7. Okay, now if white wants to take, fine, let him take. And look, we get to threaten checkmate. Okay, well, fine, I'll stop that cold. Now what do you got, white? Black is now threatening to win the bishop pair with knight b4, uncovering attack on the queen. So queen e4 hasn't really worked all that well. There's going to be a discovery coming. You could even take on d4, winning a pawn. So queen e4 is a mistake. Now white has to back the queen up, get it out of there. Now what does black do? Wow, he develops another piece. Okay, let's just pick this one. I don't know if it's the best square. I just picked it with a comparison. Now look, all three of black's minor pieces are developed. His rooks are developed and his queen's developed. It's white's move. White's a tempo and a half behind in this position. This bishop can finally get developed so that this rook can get developed, but black's ahead tempi. And he does this just by letting white do the exchanging. Get your pieces out and save time. And you apply this logic to any position, and I guarantee you your game's going to be a lot easier to play. When you make exchanges that develop your opponent's pieces and improve their position, you're making your opponent's position easier to play. So what do you want? Which would you rather have? You want easy position to play. Okay? Don't make exchanges that develop your opponent's pieces. Simple rule. Next time, Gottlieb is going to not make this exchange or in a similar position. So he makes the exchange, and this helps white out. Okay, and now he does what he should do. Well, yeah. Okay. He stops and makes a preparation move first. he's playing G6 with the idea that he doesn't want any trouble down here on H7. Okay, but it's a concession. See, simply because Black has opened up this diagonal, he's got this fear of something happening down there, and he's taken a tempo to weaken his king side a little bit. Okay, a voluntary weakness. Oops, let's get that arrow pointed the right way. Let's get rid of it. Excuse me. It's voluntarily weakness that Black shouldn't have to make. Black should, if he developed his pieces, as I showed in the other line, he could have kept that pawn structure intact and only changed matters when White made a threat. So right now, White doesn't have a threat, but Black's making sure White doesn't create a threat. The logic there is just slightly off. You're being too cautious. Number one rule: develop. Okay, this is the time to get the queen out. Okay, just bring the, or if you want, now this shuts in this our own dark squared bishop, but it does avoid the problem that we run into, which was created by the fact that Black took on E4. So, but Queen C7 is a better move than G6. Okay, so G6, and now White suddenly has a good move here at his disposal. And here it is, D5. Now this wasn't possible in the line I suggested. White didn't have enough firepower to advance that pawn into D5. So what's going to happen here is suddenly, no matter how Black slices it, he's going to have some defects in his pawn structure. Okay, if Black does nothing, just does what I suggest, develop a piece, White will capture on E6, and suddenly Black has a couple potentially weak pawns, E6 and D6. Excuse me. They're also called hanging pawns. They're hanging there on open files. They can't be supported by other pawns, so they have to be defended by pieces. That was one of the reasons why I said, just keep the pawn on D7. And now, just imagine this pawn on D7. The knight's under attack. Yes, well, it can move. It can find a new home. And if White takes on E6, Black takes back with his D pawn, and he doesn't have hanging pawns. So that's one of the drawbacks with the D6 move. Okay. Why it wasn't the best, and better to keep it back. But anyway, Black decides that he doesn't want the hanging pawns, and he comes up with this. So now he basically has a weakness. He's got a backward pawn on the open file. So White's coming out of this smelling like a rose. All right. If I have White here, I'm happy as a clam. Now White doesn't win this. We'll try to uncover that as we go. But you have to be happy with White here. And as I showed, Black had much better and could have avoided these drawbacks. But Black plays a good game here. He only has one weakness. And just because you have one weakness doesn't mean you're going to lose. But what it does mean is that your opponent has the winning chances. That's what it means. And what would you rather play with? A game where your opponent has the winning chances, or a game where it's even and you both have chances? Well, it's real simple, the latter choice. And Black could have played that type of position had he understood to play the moves that I recommended. But he didn't understand it. Now he's going to learn. He's going to learn from watching this video that this is how you play this position. You avoid this happening. Okay, now he'll probably never see this position again, but he's going to see similar positions with similar motives, and Black will be improving as a result. And if you're watching and paying attention to this video, you will too, because it's all clearly explained. Ideas. I'm not showing a lot of variations. You look at a book and they got all these variations. This. If here. My God, I had trouble looking at those when I was trying to learn chess. I mean, 10 variations, and within those 10 variations, 20 sub-variations. Oh my God. You try to play through them and understand them, and then when you time to go back to the right position. You went, well, what was the right position? Oh my God, I can't figure it out. You have to go back to the start and try it again. That was in the days before you had a computer you could analyze a game on, but where it'll keep a record like this is. Obviously this interface, I can go back to any move I want without, I can show a long variation and go back to where we were. It's not so easy when you have a full-size chess set, and that's how we learned. I'm not old, but I'm older. I came from the old school, so to speak, when we set up chess sets and or a pocket set if need be in order to analyze. So white should be happy as a clam, and black does play this game well, but he's having to defend it, and again he does a good job with his defense. But the risk he has is because he has one weakness. He's just one blunder away from having a lost game. White can afford to blunder here and probably won't have a lost game. Okay, so let's move on. Let's kind of get down to it. And again, we're not looking at a whole lot of variations. We're just discussing like one variation, what he could have done to avoid it. And when I said something was a mistake, now I'm showing you why it was a mistake. Now it's apparent why that pawn should have stayed on d7, and it's apparent why white should not have captured on e4, because he's allowed white to get this position that he shouldn't have been able to achieve. Okay, so black c6 changes to help his position, free things up, and now here comes the move that that really helps white a lot. Because now look, this bishop that white allowed to get, or black allowed to get active by making that exchange on d4, suddenly it's going to be in play. Now there's a half-open f-file coming up here that white's ready to maneuver on. All of a sudden, white's got all kinds of winning chances here. So black does well to avoid them all, and white has a threat here. He's threatening to take this pawn, and when black retakes, he can play queen takes g6 check because this f-pawn is pinned. So anyway, black takes this moment to make an exchange, and now he develops a piece. So he's basically just got this one little weakness. White's got possibilities, and here's another thing too, why you don't want to give your opponent so much leeway. There's suddenly a lot to analyze here if you're on the defensive, because more possible candidate moves come into play. With this, black has to be prepared against this move. This knight suddenly can get active in a lot of ways, okay, because the board's opening up. And then once this bishop gets into play, this rook can come into play, leading to more possibilities. So just by opening up the game a little bit for white, it's suddenly given black a much tougher task. And like I say, he drew the game, so this is fine. He did play well from this point on. Yes, he does. But next time you get in a bad game, maybe you're not going to play so well, and your opponent will play just a little bit better, and you don't steal the half point from an inferior game. Okay, so white takes and black takes, and now the bishop develops with a threat. Black must take care of the pawn on d6, and he comes up with this move. Now this move just looks shaky to begin with. I mean, simply because white can kick it away. Okay, so but it works out. We'll see, and that's what white does. He does kick it, but maybe does white have any better? This knight's wants to go to e5. How many pieces does? Let's just involves a temporary pawn sack. You'll see it here in a second. b3. Okay. The point is, if knight, well, there's a pin here. Knight takes, pawn takes, and then the queens lose. So when the queen is all said and done, black's covered it. So could black's covered e5. Okay. So maybe white shouldn't weaken c3 and put something else on e5. I mean, but that's risky too. You're on this pawn. How can white improve his position and not weaken himself? Well, here's a candidate move, rook f2. That's just an idea. Black could explore this on his own. I would make this video 5 hours if I looked at every line. But like I say, I look for ways not to weaken myself, and I say, well, how can I play a move that doesn't weaken my pawn structure yet cover that? Rook f2 is probably preferable to rook b1, simply because now you're tying your rook down to b1. By putting on an f2, you preserve the option of not only doubling on the f file, but maybe putting this rook on e1 or on d1, where we're actually attacking something. So rook f2 may have been a better move for white here. Black still got some play. He can play rook c5 as he's going to do here in a moment, but rook f2 may preserve the white advantage, and black may yet succumb to the pressure. But anyway, he played b3, and now knight e5. So if rook f2 holds up, black's dodged a bullet. White didn't find it. Okay, so I leave that for Mr. Gottlieb to look on his own and try and satisfy himself with what could happen. Okay, because that's one way you get better. Study your games. You want to tear everything apart, and I've shown you a move to start with. Okay, so now black counterattacks on c3. Now comes an exchange, and black seeks more exchanges. Now white secures that pawn. He doesn't want to lose it. Black gets another exchange, and these exchanges have helped black to a large degree, but he's still on the defensive because although the mobility those minor pieces had is gone, they've been traded. So kudos to black for doing this. So obviously, maybe this is the reason why white messed up by playing b3 and should have played rook f2. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I can't solve everything, but Gottlieb can sit down with this position and figure it out. And it can be done. You just brute force. You just work your way through, take your time, and you learn a lot about analyzing. And I've kind of shown you how to analyze in a number of these videos. And we'll come back to it in a moment. This video isn't that long. It's only 32 minutes. So anyway, black gets the queens off if he wants them. Okay, he activates a rook. This is good. Get that rook down to the 7th rank if we can. White stops that. Now he trades the queens. Now black seeks to activate his rooks. Give up the pawn. It's a good idea. A lot of times, it's interesting. A lot of times you can go into a rook and pawn ending and be down a pawn yet have a draw. It's very tough to win rook and pawn endings when you're a pawn up. Okay, there's just a lot of ways for the other side to hold on. But here he has to give up the pawn, so now black's fighting for the draw. And he gets this check, which drives the king back away. So it was a good idea to give up the pawn. Now, boom, the rook is active on the 7th rank. And guess what? Black's threatening to put another rook on the 7th rank. So good play by black to get this far. So white feels obligated to return the pawn, but winning chances are slim and none now. I'm pretty sure this is going to play out to a draw, no matter how they do it. So good job by black to get this far, and he's just basically forcing white into a few more exchanges and to consider drawn. And basically it is. White can't go anywhere with that pawn. This pawn will start running, and eventually these pawns will be exchanged. One rook will eat one, the other rook will eat the other, and we're left with a drawn position. So, like I say, I like a lot of you guys to work these things out on your own. Instead of b3, I was saying rook f2. Okay, now how does black hold on here? The white objective is to work on the d6 square. We want to win that pawn and keep the minor pieces on the board. We don't want to exchange them. Okay? That's what we want to do. The question is, can we do it? So what candidate moves can we come up with for black? And how will white react? Okay, well, the most obvious move, let's just try one line. Let's try rook c5, because that's been in the offing for a while. It develops the rook further, and it makes the queen find a new home. Where's she going to go? d2 is out. If it goes to e4, it gets tempoed. It has b7. That might be a good move. Let's try it. Let's try it. See what happens. Okay, now it looks like this is begging to be played. Okay, but now we'll put the queen on a6. Now it's out of the way. On d3, it could be running into, tempos which trade some pieces. Now the queen is, it's on the edge of the board, but it's tying this rook down a little bit. Again, this is one sample line of many possible lines. How does black continue now? Well, I feel a little insecure about pressure on this bishop. Let's just back it up, or do we want to? Or maybe we want to play knight e5, try to block that file, the pressure off of d6, and get an exchange in. Well, now if you're playing for win, you should keep your pieces on the board. So candidate moves are knight g5 and knight d4. Let's look at knight d4. Ooh, yeah, we're okay, because knight can't go to d3. The queen is covering it. Okay, so what's happening now? Well, we're trying to drop this knight into b5. That's what we're trying to do. It doesn't necessarily win a pawn, but it attacks a rook. It puts some more pressure on d6. Black may have to allow that. I am not sure how he avoids it. So let's just get this bishop out of danger. Okay, let's park him there. And let's go ahead and try this move, okay? And now I'm going to put the rook here. That helps secure d6. I don't think white can get away with taking this. He's going to get pinned. Now maybe there's some threats white can make. Rook goes to e1, which develops the rook finally. Okay, rook e1. The point being, white wants to capture on d6 and remove the defender of the knight on e5. So how does white or black react to this? Black's black's got a good move, knight d3. How long has that been sitting there? So maybe that's one of the flaws of knight b5. So we'll just keep the knight centralized and try that move. We're stopping rook d3, or knight d3 as white. So let's try rook e1 directly. Well, black doesn't have a whole lot of mobility here. Let's try this move. Let's get this rook on an open file. Okay, because f7 is covered. What can white do now? Well, one thing he can do is maybe try to cover d3 a little better. But you got to be careful. Like, for instance, rook e3 allows knight g4. It's certainly not an enviable task to defend this position as black. I'm not saying I'm finding the best moves. I'm just trying to help and analyze. And I just look at a few lines here and there. You can't take this out forever, but you basically, if you're playing, like, for instance, a correspondence game, an online chess game, then you have the luxury to spend a couple hours here and try and find the best moves. But white has a better game here, and black is still left with that weak pawn on d6. So it's still an uphill fight for black to draw, but white could have improved, I think, with rook f2. But anyway, congratulations on drawing a higher rated player. And with black, there's nothing wrong with that result. And hopefully, I've given you some plenty of food for thought and ways to play your next game better. And then when you play the next game better, you don't have to defend a position like you did, which you did a great job with doing. Then you can start thinking about beating these higher rated players instead of just allowing them to escape from your draws, because you have one advantage they don't. You're getting advice from me. That's the difference for what it's worth. All right. You're getting advice from me and they're not. All right. Thanks so much for your time, everybody. It was a pleasure making this, and I'll be making another one soon. Take care. Thanks.